6 o'clock, so everybody's here. So let's go ahead and get started. But before I call the meeting to order, I'd like to offer my heartfelt condolences to the family of Mayor Ron Smith. I greatly respected him and enjoyed his passion and dedication to the community, and I will miss his kindness and his spirit. So I'd like to ask for a moment of silence to honor his memory of this well-loved man. Thank you, everybody. So I'd like to call this meeting to order. Marilee, would you please provide the call-in information? And I don't know if you're still doing the slide, but you can provide that as well.
Okay. Thank you, Chair Reed. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I would like to take a minute to share how to speak during public comment tonight. There are 2 separate public comment periods associated with tonight's agenda. The Commission will take general public comment during agenda items number 3 and number 9. If you wish to speak during either of these public comment periods, you will need to access the Zoom link shown here on the slide or provided on the agenda located on the city's website under Boards and Commissions. You can also join the meeting by telephone by dialing 1-669-900-6833, and the meeting ID number is 946-9114-7718. This will join you by audio to the meeting. You will be prompted by either the chair or the secretary when public comment is open. Use the Zoom link features or press *9 on your telephone to speak. Please note that pressing *9 once will raise your hand to speak, and pressing it again will lower your hand. Please make sure your hand is raised if you wish to speak. Individuals shall limit their comments to 3 minutes per Nevada Revised Statute 241.020.
Thank you, Marilee. Can we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Reed?
Here.
Commissioner Peterson?
Here.
Commissioner Blako?
Here.
Commissioner Carey?
Present.
Commissioner Pritzos?
Here.
Commissioner Rawson?
Here.
Assistant City Attorney Allison McCormick?
Here.
Assistant Community Services Director Armando Ornelas?
Here. I'm here.
Thank you. This is public comment for any item on or off the agenda. Do we have anyone waiting on the line for public comment?
We do not have any requests to speak at this time.
All right, thank you. Seeing as there is none, we'll move a closed public comment and move on to item 4, which is approval of the agenda. Can I get a motion? Commissioner Peterson.
I'd like to approve the agenda as read if there's no alterations or changes.
Thank you. Can I get a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Peterson and a second by Commissioner Ralston. Can we please have a roll call vote?
Commissioner Reed?
Aye.
Commissioner Peterson?
Aye.
Commissioner Blako?
Aye.
Commissioner Carey? Commissioner Pritzos?
Aye.
Commissioner Rawson?
Aye.
Motion passes. Item 5 is approval of the minutes. First is the review and possible approval of the minutes of the August 4th, 2020 Planning Commission study session. Can I get a motion on the minutes?
Madam Chairman, I'd like to approve the minutes of August 4th as read.
Thank you.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Peterson and a second by Commissioner Pritsos. Can we please get a roll call vote?
Commissioner Reed,
Aye.
Commissioner Peterson,
Aye.
Commissioner Blako,
Aye.
Commissioner Carey,
Aye.
Commissioner Pritsos,
Aye.
Commissioner Rawson.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion passes. Second is the review and possible approval of the minutes of the August 6, 2020 Planning Commission meeting. Can I get a motion?
Again, Madam Chairman, I'd like to approve the minutes of August 6th.
Thank you.
I second it.
Was that Commissioner Pritsos that seconded?
That was Rawson.
Oh, okay. I couldn't hear that well. Okay, so we have a motion by Commissioner Peterson and a second by Commissioner Rawson. Can we get a roll call vote, please?
Commissioner Reed,
Aye.
Commissioner Peterson,
Aye.
Commissioner Blako,
Aye.
Commissioner Carey,
Aye.
Commissioner Pritsos,
Aye.
Commissioner Rawson.
Aye.
Thank you. Motion passes. Since there are no public hearing items, let's move on to general business. First up is PCN 20-0023, consideration of and possible action on a request to approve architectural building elevations for 13,000. Oh my goodness. Is it 886 square feet medical office and fulfillment of the requirements set forth in the Stonebrook Final Design Standards and Regulations Handbook? I need to put on some eyeglasses. I couldn't see that.
All right, thank you, Madam Chair, Planning Commissioners. Jonathan Cummins, Planner. 20-0023, as you said, is a request for the approval of architectural elevations for a 13,886 square foot building located at 7900 Pyramid Way in the Stonebrook Plan Development. My first slide here is give you an idea of where the building is located. So we're in sort of the northwestern most part of the city here. The hatched line there is the city limits. So this particular site is located adjacent to Pyramid Highway as it starts to approach La Posada going north of the city limits. Essentially, we're here tonight to review architectural elevations, and so I wanted to kind of give you a quick run around the building here. These are the images that were included in your packet, which you saw for tonight's meeting, included with the staff report. So this is a look at the northern elevation, looking toward the building from Opio Parkway. Then we'll kind of go around the building here. Let me situate it here. So this is the building from the east. So this is the side opposite Pyramid. And then again, we'll go over here to the western elevation, and you'll see this is what would be seen from Pyramid Highway. And the southern elevation showing the ambulance bay to the right with some of the sort of blue elements of the main color scheme. And then we'll go back around here, and I'll sort of stop here when we get back up to the north elevation so you can kind of see what we're dealing with as I go through our staff report comments. So again, I'll leave it here. This is the north elevation. This is the main entrance to the building. So new commercial buildings are required to go through the city's administrative review process. And at that point, staff reviews site plans, architecture, any potential impacts of a given use at a particular location. The current request is on a site that's undeveloped at this time, as are the properties that are surrounding this site in the Stonebrook Plan Development. And so the Stonebrook Handbook requires that commercial architecture be reviewed and approved by the Planning Commission prior to the issuance of an approval letter for the administrative review that's done by staff. So the proposed elevations conform to the standards outlined in the handbook, as outlined in the staff report, through the use of color and plane changes in combination with height and material variations on all sides of the building. The proposed building is a one-story design, and it reaches a maximum height of 25 feet 9 inches atop the proposed mechanical screening, which you can see the element here in this image. The proposed elevations also incorporate block-style design surrounding the doors with faux columns, each incorporating a lot of this mosaic-style use of different shades of blue and gray to contrast with the sort of beige stucco design that's featured throughout the rest of the building. Also, as we outlined in the staff report, the main architectural standards that are required in the handbook do include 4 elements which are present in the proposed elevations. 1, building facades are articulated using color and material changes to emphasize the design elements. 2, the use of expressed columns, recessed doors and windows, as well as changes in texture. 3, that rear and sides are consistent with the principal facade. And 4, that the use of awnings, windows, columns, as well as color and material changes are used to add visual interest. So to clarify again, before I conclude here, the scope of Planning Commission's review is limited to the architectural design. The applicant's representative is also on the meeting with us tonight, and I believe will be ready to make his own presentation to supplement what we hear. Staff is recommending approval of the proposed elevations, and I'll be glad to take your questions.
Thank you, Jonathan. Does any of the commissioners have questions for staff? Okay, I don't, let me scroll down. I don't see any. So can we go ahead and have the applicant's rep?
Thank you. Can you, Chair Reed, can you hear me okay? John Krumpotic. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, you can't? Okay, great. Is the volume okay? I always have to mess with it. You know, technology varies by jurisdiction. And is my volume okay? I have to go with them. Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you very much. Also with me is several of the team from UHS, the corporate group. Doug, you can see Doug Matney's name on the bottom of the screen. Tim Fowler and Helen Lindholm. She is the CEO of Northern Nevada Medical Center. They're here for any questions. I realize the scope of this, as stated by John, is about architectural elevation review. However, of course, we would be glad to engage with any other things that you see as important to the commission. So I also noticed that in John's presentation, I'm going to go through my own slides here. It's going to be quite a bit redundant because we're so focused here, but it's harmlessly redundant and it should be okay. So let me go ahead and share screen and get this rolling here. So can we see that okay? Everything's good? Mm-hmm. Thank you. Okay, so this is a request for approval of the architectural elevations for the freestanding emergency department. We call it FED. It's a new type of facility in the healthcare industry, basically decentralized emergency services that serve more regional purpose. And I think it's a neat concept. I've worked with them on another one in Reno, and then of course they're a major hospital that's under construction today. So that's a bit about the Northern Nevada Medical Center and UHS. The architect is GA Studio Blocks, Ty Cole. He is not with us because he's on the East Coast. And there's my name at the bottom. I wanted to show you the site plan just because it's nice to know how it all relates. So we've got the elevations noted, as John Cummings mentioned, north we're calling adjacent to or facing Opio Ranch, and the front of the building west facing Pyramid Highway. And then, of course, there's the detail on the parking landscape plan and how the building sits on the site. So I wanted to touch on these because we appreciate the staff review and they're showing compliance with the Stone Book standards. What I've done to keep us focused, I'll just touch on the ones that we believe do jive with the building standards. As stated by staff, building facades, number one, shall be articulated using color arrangement and or change in materials to emphasize the facade elements. The third bullet is details such as deep reveals, express columns, recessed doors, windows, and changes in texture. Help divide a wall plane into smaller scales. Certainly that is present in the elevations. Rear and side elevations shall be designed, that'd be the fourth bullet point that we also see as applicable to meeting the standards, and shall be architecturally consistent. Obviously, there is a theme that's going on here, and it's wrapped entirely around the building, as we typically do these days in development. All four sides have to be treated with some sense of consistency and a certain level of detail. We took credit for the fifth bullet here, and you see I say per architect, he designed this. We went over in detail, and certainly there are screen walls that you will see. John I don't know if he pointed them out, but they were on the elevation. So, that is one of the standards that has been met. And then the last one, also as noted by staff, touchy mouse, there we go. Awnings, windows, columns, and color of change, material changes shall be used to add visual interest. We would hope that you would agree with the meeting of that standard. Then there's the other section, and I'll be even more brief here, the Stonebrook Design Standards about entryway. We definitely have elements of a portico on the first bullet point at the entryway. The awnings and overhangs, same. There's quite a bit going on recess and articulation. The third bullet point is recess. The fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh one, decorative exterior wall, window, and door treatments are present. And then the last one would be, again, as noted by staff, integral planters, which you're going to see in the couple of images that I share here. So this one is, this one gives you a little more detail, and it's not elevation, but we wanted to show three-dimensionally what's really going on. And you can see a lot of the elements that we've discussed in the standards are shown in this picture. Similarly, so that is the front of the building that would be facing Pyramid Highway. Next one, different perspective. So if you can see where that ambulance is in that side of the building, that would be that oriented to Opio Ranch Parkway. So that's what we're calling the north elevation in this bundle of information. And as far as the elevations go, so again, as John noted, a bit of redundancy, I do have a key map on the bottom so you can relate the elevation to the site plan, but the west elevation facing Pyramid, you'll see that we do have this area up on top that I mentioned that is screened, and it is obviously one of the bullet points that we're showing that the standards do in fact meet. Signing is as quiet as can be. This is an emergency center, so obviously we need to note that in the signing, red's the typical color for that kind of a use for ambulance and emergency signing. There is the north elevation facing Opio Parkway. Again, you see the themes fairly consistent. There's a lot variation vertically and horizontally to meet the standards. Rooftop screening, again, noted there. And clear story window beyond, I think that's kind of a cool feature for being up on top there. There is the east elevation. It's adjacent to a remainder lot. And then the south, that's a remainder lot. Similarly on the south elevation. You see the materials, colors, variations are all in place there. So I will keep it brief and turn it over to the commissioners. Thank you very much for allowing us to present. And again, the UHS, if you guys do have anything on the operation, it's a little bit unique and it's new to the market, we'd be glad to have the experts from UHS and Northern Nevada Medical Center explain those.
Thank you, John. Do any of the, can you unshare the screen so that I can?
Of course, thank you.
No worries.
These
It's easier for me to see everybody than I.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Perfect. Thank you, John.
Thank
So
you.
do any of the commissioners have questions for the any of the applicant representatives?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
before we get too far into any questions, I do want to counsel the commission that you are just here to review the building elevations, and straying too far into the operations of this facility would probably violate open meeting law.
Thank you, Allison. Are there any questions? Yes, Commissioner Peterson.
I have one of John. I noticed that the elevations don't have many windows in them. Is there a reason for that?
I think it's because, the nature of the services kind of need to be a little more secluded, right? Like transparency is not part of the deal when you're talking about a freestanding emergency center with kind of privatized medical services. At the end of the day, pardon me.
I can understand that. My other question then is this. I've seen a lot of medical facilities elevations before, and this was kind of a shock to my system because of that one reason. And the other thing is, I have no objection to the elevations. I really don't. I got adjusted to them. I just didn't expect to be a medical facility by the elevations until the signage. That is what really convinced me. But I have no objections to your elevation, but I understand by your last statement on that first slide that you were going to make some other modifications later on that.
On what exactly?
On the elevations?
No, these are the latest ones.
Oh, that's up to date then.
This is up to date. There was a little bit of a refinement in color. They wanted to have a consistent Northern Nevada theme, and you see that blue band that was represented in all of the elevations. That was important to their team, both local and corporate, and so it's a little bit of identifier for Northern Nevada. Thank you for the questions, by the way, Commissioner Peterson.
Thank you for the answers. Great, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Peterson. Are there any further questions? Commissioner Carey.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I just had a question for staff. I was looking at the staff report and was looking on page 15, and I appreciate you, Jonathan, showing the exhibit 7A. That's the illustrative commercial concept exhibit. From my view of looking at it, it looks like the illustrative concept that's in the handbook. It's a design that's really similar to the Winco that we had approved a couple months ago. And it's kind of more of a commercial nature, but the illustrative concept kind of had, there was signage that said 24-hour emergency or whatever. My question is how much flexibility or latitude does the commission have tonight with reviewing the proposed elevations with that illustrative concept that's included on Exhibit 7-8 of the handbook?
Just to elaborate on your question, Commissioner Carey, are you asking whether the Planning Commission can condition the approval of the architecture? Is that something you're questioning us, wondering about?
No, not a condition. I guess I'm kind of with that illustrative concept. It looks like it's significantly different than what's proposed by the applicant.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
Tonight, how much latitude, how much flexibility, how conceptual do we take, or how rigid do we have to take that conceptual elevation in our review tonight?
Well, so Commissioner Carey, to elaborate, I think, I'm glad you say conceptual, because I believe that that's what the image in the handbook is intended to provide is a concept of what a commercial development of, whether it's the scale of a larger big box type store, which that image clearly was. And that's where we fall back on the language of the handbook, which is where we as well as Mr. Krampotic, outlined, which phases from the actual design standards, which is a narrative form in the handbook. And it's not so much that a proposed commercial building would have to look this particular way, but that here's an example of what a big box store might look like, and then it incorporates those designs that are sort of outlined in that language. And then, of course, we just have to take that language and see if it applies to a specific proposal, which in this case we found that it did.
Okay, thank you. That's really helpful, Jonathan. I appreciate the answer on the record.
Welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Carey. Any further questions? So I'll bring it back. Is there any further discussion by the commission, or I'll entertain a motion? Commissioner Peterson.
I'd like to take a stab at the motion, please. I move to approve the architectural elevation for a 13,886 square foot medical office on a site approximately 1.5 acres in size, located at 7900 Pyramid Way, Sparks, Nevada, in the HUD New Urban District, Stony Brook Planned Development Zoning Zoning District.
Thank you, Commissioner Peterson. Can I get a second?
Commissioner Blako. Oh, go for it.
So I think Commissioner Pritzos.
No, that's fine. Yeah, go for it.
All right, we have a motion by Commissioner Peterson, a second by Commissioner Pritzos. Any further discussion? Commissioner Carey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a couple comments before the vote. I appreciate the additional information brought forth by the applicant with respect to the different entrance design elements. I was kind of missing a couple, so I appreciate, John, you pointing out those standards. And thank you, Jonathan, for the explanation on the illustrative concept. I at first look, I agree with kind of what staff was saying. I think that this does meet all of the required standards in the handbook, but the design looked a lot different than that concept, and that concept was really for a commercial building. And I understand the underlying land use on this property is commercial, but this is a medical facility, and I think the design that the applicant has proposed will stand out, and that's probably a really good thing for a medical facility, especially with an emergency room attached to it. People may need to find this sort of facility, and having it stand out as opposed to having it look like the rest of the commercial that's coming on board is a good thing. So I will be supporting the motion, and thank you for the explanation.
Thank you, Commissioner Carey. Any further discussion? Okay, can we go ahead and have a roll call vote on the motion?
Commissioner Reed?
Aye.
Commissioner Peterson?
Aye.
Commissioner Blako?
Aye.
Commissioner Carey?
Aye.
Commissioner Pritzos?
Aye.
Commissioner Rawson?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Motion passes. Thank you, staff, and to the applicant. Next on the...
Chairwoman Reed?
Yes.
May I interrupt? This is Armando Ornelas, Assistant Community Services Director. Sienna Reed, who will be co-leading the workshop portion, the next item on the agenda, has lost internet. If we may ask for a 5-minute recess to see if we can get her reestablished, or alternatively shifted over so that Jim is able to lead the presentation, it would be appreciated.
Oh, of course. All right, let's go ahead and take a 5-minute recess.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, I didn't realize that was a photo of Armando. I thought he was just staying really still.
Chairwoman Reed, the other Ms. Reed has joined us, and I think we're at 5 minutes, so at your pleasure.
Thank you. Let's go ahead and get started then on the next agenda item, which is PCN 20-0031, review and discussion of and possible direction to city staff regarding draft amendments to the City of Sparks comprehensive plan.
Right. Well, thank you, Madam Chair and members of the Planning Commission. Definitely, a little bit of a rocky start in terms of getting internet connectivity to work in my favor. So I definitely appreciate the recess. As a heads up, my internet connection is unstable. Jim has a copy of this PowerPoint, and so our backup plan, if everything goes down at my home, is to get that presentation up via his screen, and then I can call in and engage in the conversation alongside everyone else at that time. So we have a plan. But with that, as noted by Madam Chair, what we have tonight for you is a workshop item. It's intended for you to discuss and provide direction on a set of amendments to the comprehensive plan. And the changes that are proposed in the Planning Commission review draft that was attached to the staff report are predominantly needed to conform with the 2019 Truckee Meadows Regional Plan that was adopted almost a year ago at this point in time. So before we get going, really wanted to just give you a bit of background regarding why we're bringing forward the amendments for your consideration at this time. Here, state law requires that our comprehensive plan and any amendments to that plan conform with the Truckee Meadows Regional Plan. In 2016, the City of Sparks comprehensive plan was fully updated and approved in October of 2016. That was after an extensive community outreach effort. And ultimately, that 2016 comprehensive plan was found in conformance with the 2012 Truckee Meadows Regional Plan that was in place at that time. So, fast forward a few years, what we have is the new 2019 regional plan being adopted in October of 2019. Following that adoption, pursuant to state law, the City of Sparks forwarded its comprehensive plan to be reviewed for conformance with that new and updated regional plan. So in April of this year, that conformance review took place. Our current 2016 comprehensive plan was found in conformance, but with a list of 8 scheduled additions that are needed to more fully implement the new plan's policy framework. So ultimately, what was agreed to between City of Sparks and Truckee Meadows Regional Planning Agency staff was an October 2020 timeframe to bring forward amendments to the Sparks Comprehensive Plan addressing those scheduled additions. So in sticking to that timeframe, staff has drafted a set of comprehensive plan amendments for your review, consideration, and direction regarding modification. And again, direction regarding this workshop review draft. We still have a bit ahead in terms of ultimately producing a Planning Commission public hearing review draft. So as I mentioned, the bulk of the amendments address changes needed to conform to that new regional plan. However, we've also included general updates to the plan for maintenance purposes, as well as a limited number of targeted policy changes that are intentionally quite narrow in scope to comply with that October 2020 timeframe that we have to address our scheduled additions. We certainly know that there are other comprehensive plan components that need to be updated. However, some of them require a much deeper dive to inform potential amendments, and that needs to be accounted for in upcoming work program efforts. So for the workshop tonight, our plan is to provide an overview of the draft amendments based in the order that you can see on this slide. As this is a workshop item, questions and discussions are intended to occur throughout the presentation. That is incredibly more difficult over Zoom than in person. But certainly, feel free to jump in anytime with questions and thoughts. We will certainly, be looping back at the end to catch any topics and desired conversations after we make our way through the initial discussion of the amendments. And just in terms of, housekeeping here, I'll be taking the lead on giving, that initial overview of the draft amendments as we move through the presentation. But you have Jim Rundle and Armando Ornelas here assisting with this workshop. So also, another last bit of housekeeping, as a quick reminder, all of the draft textual additions and deletions to the comprehensive plan that we'll be discussing tonight, those are shown in a track changes format in attachment to your staff report. So I just wanted to make sure all those bases were covered.
Excuse me, Sienna, I was wondering if it might be a good idea, because of being in the Zoom format, if the commissioners took advantage of the Q&A option at the bottom of the screen and to provide their questions, because it would be easier than trying to, I think that would be a better way to manage the questions.
Chair Reed, if I might interrupt, I don't know that this webinar is set up for Q&A.
Oh, okay. Well, we won't do that way then. Just if you have a question, just go ahead and raise your hand during the presentation.
And one thing I'll definitely do is try to do a good long linger on each of the slides before moving on. So Chair Reed, if you're able to see those hands coming up, we should be able to move through if that works for you.
Chair Reed, will you be able to see everyone if we're on the screen share? This is Jim Rundle.
I can see it if I scroll. It's not like I have to do a lot. So I'll just frequently scroll and check whenever Sienna pauses for questions. I can easily do that.
All right. Well, that sounds like a good approach to an odd workshop format. So we'll do our best as we move along. Okay, so starting off here with a variety of general updates to the comprehensive plan. Again, those are needed for plan maintenance. Other than property-specific comprehensive plan land use changes that you've seen and considered, the plan hasn't been updated since its approval in 2016. So what you'll find in the Planning Commission workshop draft of the plan are updated figures, maps, and statistics based on the most current data available. Most of those updates are found in Chapter 3, which is Sparks Today in terms of the name. However, there are updates throughout the entire plan. We've also updated narrative descriptions associated with City of Sparks and Regional Transportation Commission projects to reflect their 2020 status. And we've included a summary of the 2019 long-term fiscal health analysis findings. That's in the Managing Growth section of Chapter 4 and provides context around a balanced land use pattern and an adequate inventory of land for employment. You'll remember from the August 4th study session that the city currently lacks industrial lands and has an excess of lands for retail and office uses. And then lastly here, in terms of these general updates, the land use category tables that are included in Chapter 4 of the comprehensive plan are updated, not only just to remove some outdated reference, but to delete a column that contains the city's land use categories that were in place prior to the adoption of the 2016 comprehensive plan. That column and information contained therein was certainly very useful in showing how these old categories were translated to the new categories that we use today. However, with 4 years now of using our current land use categories, removal of the older ones is appropriate at this time.
Commissioner Carey.
Thank you. I unmuted myself. Sienna, just kind of from a general update perspective, I was curious if there is a report available that kind of tracks the implementation of the current comprehensive plan. I know when I got appointed to the Planning Commission, I think it was the meeting following after the City Council adopted this comprehensive plan. But I seem to recall that there was some discussion at that time on tracking the matrix that's in the back and seeing how each one of these policies are kind of working. I didn't know if it may not be a part of or appropriate for this update, but I didn't know if there was a report that kind of tracks all of the implementation of this comprehensive plan.
Commissioner Carey.
Someone else jump in.
Commissioner Carey, this is Armando Ornelas, Assistant Community Services Director. No, there is not.
Okay. I think the matrix does a good job of kind of showing who's responsible for what, but I think it's just good. It's always a good exercise for any plan to be able to track its progress. And I think from my perspective as a planning commissioner, just kind of seeing how we're doing on these policies. Just a thought. Thank you for the answer.
You're welcome.
Okay, let's go ahead and move on.
Okay. Sounds good. All right, so with this slide, moving on to the draft amendments that relate to regional plan conformance. Each of the amendments summarized on this slide make changes to the narrative portions of the managing growth section of our comprehensive plan, and that's found in Chapter 4 of the plan. Here, it's worth noting that the 2019 regional plan was very much a substantive update. It significantly revised the plan's land use and policy framework. One of the largest changes was a shift from identifying centers, both downtown and regional, as well as transit-oriented development corridors, to a new regional land use framework based on tiers with applicable density requirements. And you can actually see on this slide that kind of regional form map that shows those tiers. So today what we have in terms of a regional plan, from that form perspective, we have a mixed use core, we have tiers 1, 2, and 3 that are located within our Truckee Meadows service area boundary, and then rural designations that are outside of that Truckee Meadows service area boundary. And you'll remember from kind of the regional plan update conversations that these tiers establish the regional priority for growth and infrastructure investment. So really kind of, working out from the mixed use core in terms of where we are prioritizing that future growth and infrastructure investment. What we've drafted in our comprehensive plan to reflect these changes is a description of the new regional land use framework, i.e. kind of tiering, and compliance with the applicable density requirements in that managing growth section of the plan. In addition, with the update of the regional plan, a designation called Emerging Employment Center, or EEC, and associated policy requirements were deleted from the plan. That Emerging Employment Center concept was intended to identify locations where rapid employment growth would occur, and there were various requirements from a policy perspective related to residential and non-residential land supply, roadway access, pedestrian connections, transit and trip reduction. And we had 2 areas identified in the City of Sparks comprehensive plan. East Sparks near I-80 and Vista, and then North Sparks generally within Kylie Ranch and Pioneer Meadows. However, due to the removal of this concept from the regional plan, we're removing it or proposing removal from our comprehensive plan. What we do have, though, are land supply considerations, access, and pedestrian facilities being addressed in other portions of our comprehensive plan. So we do have an overall policy framework that addresses a lot of those same topics. And also during the regional plan update, identified cooperative planning areas were also deleted. The cooperative plan is a tool that still remains alive in the Truckee Meadows Regional Plan. It allows for local governments to collaboratively plan for a designated area, but there aren't actually any identified in the regional plan at this time. So due to that removal of the actual designated areas, we're proposing removal of former cooperative planning areas also from our comprehensive plan. These include the West Pyramid area and then the area that's east of Cimarron East. And it's worth noting that a cooperative planning process occurred for the West Pyramid area already. And then if there were ever a desire to do so for other areas, those would be identified in the regional plan and then worked through in terms of our cooperative planning process to produce a portion of the master plan that addresses that area. And lastly, here on this slide, due to the addition of a new policy in the regional plan regarding land use compatibility within local government comprehensive plans, we've also enhanced language on this topic. That language makes it clear that not only the goals and policies of the comprehensive plan promote land use compatibility, but the land use categories themselves also address compatibility with surrounding designations.
I don't see any questions. Sienna, go ahead and keep going.
Sounds good. All right, so continuing on with changes related to regional plan conformance, we also have proposed changes for the city's mixed use district. And those are based on the changes that were made to the regional plan. We have draft comprehensive plan changes in 2 locations. First is within our mixed use district narrative, that's in the managing growth section of chapter 4. And then secondly, actually within the mixed use district, mixed use commercial land use category, or the MUD, MUC, as it's a little bit easier to say. And that's within our actual land use tables in chapter 4 of the plan. So overall, the draft changes to the mixed use district, they reflect what's been an ongoing shift in the regional plan from that geographic identification of downtown and regional centers connected by a transit-oriented development corridor, which is served by BRT, to what is now that mixed use core that we were just talking about. That mixed use core is still the region's most intense area for development, the highest priority location for investment, and it's generally served by transit and should have enhanced connectivity for various modes of transportation, not just automobiles. And so on this point, just a bit further, it's important to note that that shift in the regional plan kind of to the mixed use core, which is the exact same area as our mixed use district, was influenced by the experiences of the cities of Reno and Sparks in implementing the regional plan policies and the density requirements that were in the former regional plan. We had required minimum residential density and non-residential density, or excuse me, non-residential floor area ratio that was reduced with the regional plan. And with the mixed use core, we don't have this primary focus on bus rapid transit. The mixed use core is still absolutely the area where we want that higher density development, prioritize new growth and infrastructure investment, so that we do get these diverse and vibrant places that also support, the efficient provision of public services. However, this approach is a refinement that has been evolving over time with changes to the local government master plans and codes. And ultimately what has resulted in the changes to the regional plan. So in terms of the draft amendments that you have before you tonight within the workshop review draft, rather than a bus rapid transit route within our mixed use district, we've identified a primary investment corridor where various forms of investment should be focused. Public investment for enhanced pedestrian and bicycle facilities, public spaces, transit, and infrastructure capacity are each needed alongside private sector investment in infill and redevelopment. Higher order transit service is still supported with this transition from the bus rapid transit line to the primary investment corridor, but it's not the main investment focus. And I'm just going to switch to the next slide so you can get a little bit of a visual of where these things, these different designations are located. With this slide, what you'll see is the location of the primary investment corridor. It's shown in kind of the thicker red line. Craterway to Sparks Boulevard, then north of the marina, and ultimately, connecting to Victoria is generally the old bus rapid transit route. And Audi Boulevard is also identified now as a primary investment corridor through the proposed changes that you're considering. Activity centers, which you can see in the kind of dashed red circles and the dashed blue circles, are still compact mixed-use areas where more intensive patterns of development should be concentrated. And there's no change to these activity centers with the draft changes that you have before you tonight. Just this kind of nomenclature as it relates to the primary investment corridor, and then the extension of that corridor to the Audi Boulevard location. And so lastly, as it relates to the mixed use district, we do have modifications to that MUD, MUC land use category. That's actually in our land use category tables themselves. As proposed, it's modified to be at a 0.25 floor area ratio. That's what's allowed per the new regional plan. And over time, what staff has found is that the residential minimum densities for this land use category, they seem to work at 24 and 18 dwelling units per acre, depending on adjacency to the proposed primary investment corridor. And those densities are very much above the new 2019 regional plan requirement of 14 dwelling units per acre minimum for residential. However, commercial development at the former regional plan floor area ratios, those ranged between 1.0 and 0.25, wasn't necessarily supported by market demand. And currently in our plan, the MUD MUC requires 0.75 and 0.5 floor area ratios. And that depends again on your adjacency to the proposed primary investment corridor. So what you'll find in the workshop draft is that the category is modified to have a 0.25 floor area ratio for all non-residential development in the MUD MUC, regardless of location, kind of that proximity aspect to the primary investment corridor. In terms of why is this modification appropriate, staff believes that it is at this time as we hope the non-residential floor area ratios will come up over time as land becomes more valuable with higher density residential density projects coming online. I know that was a fair bit and going back and forth between two slides, so happy to skip back and forth as needed between them.
I see Commissioner Carey has a question. Go ahead.
Madam Chair, I had a question within the mixed use district and the changes that we're trying with the comprehensive plan update here. Given the funding limitations and the severe revenue projections that the RTC has for transit in the region, how do you see the mixed use district and the city's vision in terms of land use? How do you see the city being able to accomplish all we want to do with these new policies with the existing cuts that the city has sustained over the past year and possible new cuts?
Yeah, so when ultimately we were trying to get this kind of suite of draft amendments together, that was definitely discussed in talking about what is the focus of the primary investment corridor. Why is it appropriate to shift away from a bus rapid transit route, which is very much transit heavy. And Commissioner Carey, some of the things that you've brought up in terms of funding challenges for transit, those are some of the reasons behind it. However, you know, the land use pattern associated with the mixed use district, trying to get higher density development, that it is still very much valid in terms of creating places that function differently than, say, suburban types of locations across the city. When you have higher density development and you have quality public spaces and good pedestrian and bicycle facilities, you still accomplish a lot of the goals of the mixed use district, and you still support transit if there is an ability to kind of upgrade services over time. So we really, you know, noted a lot of what you're bringing up in trying to craft these amendments for your consideration, and definitely interested to hear more of your thoughts.
Yeah, just as a follow-up, Madam Chair, you know, we've seen over a third of the fixed route transit services and Sparks be cut by the RTC over the past year. And they've gone from a complete shift in transit mode from, you know, fixed route to the on-demand type service. And I don't necessarily think that fits well within what we're trying to do as a city with the mixed use district. But, you know, I haven't seen any evidence from the RTC staff that it does. I think it's great to expand transit and the other services to the other areas of the city to help promote these existing routes. But I really have my doubts, and I've said this for the past several years, and we're looking at you know, high floor area ratio projects within this corridor, that the RTC will be able to maintain any type of transit service out to Sparks Boulevard along Prater Way. And it was only until recently this earlier this month we got some good news that the Route 26 was going back out to Northern Nevada Medical Center. But for the past year, it's been an on-demand service, and I don't know what that does to promote our land use patterns, and I don't know what it does to encourage the higher densities that we are building, and we're actually leading the region in terms of the density. Thank you. I'll get off my high horse on that one.
Chairwoman Reed, I'm sorry. Jim, did you want to say something?
Go ahead.
Go ahead, Armando. I'll come after you.
Okay. You know, I think the other thing I would just call to the Planning Commission's agenda is that that shift from, you know, the bus rapid transit route corridors to the primary investment corridor really is intended to address a wider range of public investment in this, you know, in these particular areas. And while certainly the RTC has suffered revenue losses and are, you know, scaling back their transit service, you know, they remain on pace to do the Audi Boulevard corridor improvements. The other thing is, I would say that in these corridors on the city side, you know, there's been a substantial amount of investment here over the last few years. And I think given the amount of infill and other, you know, development activity that we have been seeing along these corridors, have been directing, for example, investments in terms of our wastewater conveyance infrastructure. You know, with the lodging tax that is earmarked for Victorian Square, we are able to do some things there. And you'll see some additional investment with that source of funding over the next few years. And then I think with the development that we've already had occur, the residential development that we've already had occur, you know, we have generated residential construction tax. That's the $1,000 per unit, basically, that is earmarked for park facilities. And I think we have started to see the city finally be able to direct some investment to park facilities in you know, in these general areas. So I think that the point here is that this concept of a primary investment corridor is intended to push local governments and the other affected entities towards public investment in these specific areas. And so hopefully there will be opportunities with other resources and other investments to offset some of what perhaps we're not going to see from the RTC.
Thank you, Armando. Jim, did you want to also address Commissioner Carey's comments?
Yes, please. Thank you, Chair Reed. I think Commissioner Carey, you'll be serving as an alternate to the regional planning for this next week, I believe, in Councilwoman Vanderwaal's spot, and I believe we have Chair Reed. You're on regional planning, and then is it Commissioner Blako? Is that our third person at this time?
Yes, Commissioner Blako is on that.
And so what potentially you will see at regional planning is in the next few months is the Sparks Comprehensive Plan come back for conformance review at regional planning after you review it at Sparks Planning Commission. Another component that you would see, for example, is the Regional Transportation Commission's Regional Transportation Plan. So RTC's RTP, they call it, the 2050 RTP. We had a meeting today on the RTP, Commissioner Carey, and what RTC is proposing to do through one of my requests was address the regional plan policy that a commitment to the mixed use district that Sienna showed on her earlier slide that we're intending to do higher density and promote that investment in will be have a dedicated, not dedicated funding source, but a consideration to how much money is being spent in those areas. And that is what some of the tiering approach is in reference to in the regional plan, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, and then rural development areas, so that you see a less investment by the agencies as the tiering goes out. And they are proposing and working through a weighted structure of at this point, I think it was 15 points to areas that were tier 1 and in the higher density area. What's the high density area called, Sienna? The mixed use
core.
Mixed use core. Thank you. So that they were being sure to address in the regional plan that policy that they have to show how they are committing to promoting more investment in those areas into the tiered structure. So I was excited to see RTC propose that, and of course it's just in the draft form at this point, but they are at least considering that they need to address that regional plan policy.
Thank you, Jim. Are there any other questions? I don't see any more, so Sienna, please continue.
Okay, moving along here. Okay, so finishing out the draft amendments that are related to regional plan conformance, we also have various policy changes throughout Chapter 4 of our comprehensive plan that align with a whole host of other regional plan policies. So to kind of walk you through these, we have policy CF16 being modified and policy CF17 being added, both to the community facilities and services section of Chapter 4. And that's to comply with policies related to regional utility corridors. Policy CF16 addresses the required 10-foot setback from regional utility corridors. And then policy CF17 specifies that there's a hierarchy for the placement of electrical transmission infrastructure. And that hierarchy generally moves from co-location of electrical transmission infrastructure on infrastructure that's already there to widening out a corridor so that you can, actually install new electrical transmission infrastructure in generally the same place. And then, kind of at the bottom of the hierarchy, adding a new corridor to accommodate the infrastructure. We also have draft changes to policy H6 in the housing and affordability section of Chapter 4. That policy is modified to address the future utilization of the regional strategy for housing affordability in updates to the City of Sparks housing plan. The regional strategy for housing affordability was completed in 2019, and it includes various approaches to increasing affordability in the region. There are actions identified in the strategy with various entities identified as lead implementers. For those actions where Sparks is a lead implementer, what we'd be doing is reviewing those actions to see if they make sense for Sparks and determining how to best move forward with integrating them into an updated housing plan and potentially our housing policies. We also have policy RC28 within the resiliency and conservation section of Chapter 4 to address the treatment of slopes with gradients between 15 and 30%, consistent with our Sparks Municipal Code. This is a topic, 15 to 30% slopes, that was previously addressed in the city's former comprehensive plan, and it was ultimately codified with the city's slopes, hilltops, and ridges standards. And so with those standards in place, at a certain point, the policy was removed. But as the regional planning agency can't look into the city zoning code, we're adding back in a policy on the treatment of 15 to 30% slopes that is consistent with our code. And then lastly here, you can see on this slide, policy MG3 regarding the retention of emerging employment centers in the managing growth section of Chapter 4 is deleted based on their removal from the regional plan. As I previously mentioned in discussing those narrative changes relating to EECs, the removal of that designation and policy doesn't mean employment lands aren't addressed. We have potential policy modifications that we'll be discussing more towards the end of this workshop item. But we think those policy modifications will help us manage employment lands in a more effective way.
Sienna, keep going.
Okay. All right, so shifting gears here to the targeted policy changes. Here again, these are very much limited in scope to ensure that we meet the time frame to complete our scheduled additions. Starting off here with policy changes relating to flooding. Prior to the 2016 comprehensive plan, there were goals and policies related to the critical zone, which is the area of the 1997 flood. Well, the comprehensive plan in place right now has policies regarding the reduction of flooding risk and mitigating the impacts of new development. Adding back more detailed policies that were omitted during the update is needed. So to do so, what we have proposed in the workshop draft is a new critical zone map that's included in Chapter 3 of the plan. 6 new policies are added to the resiliency and conservation section of Chapter 4. And we've actually elevated policy RC15 up to a goal because it was fairly broad. The policies that are in the resiliency and conservation section of the plan address, when the elevation of structures is needed and when the use of flood-resistant construction methods should be utilized. They also provide guidance on how comprehensive plan amendments in the critical zone should be evaluated. Here, encouraging the maintenance of an open space designation, and if there's a request to change to a more intense comprehensive plan land use designation, requiring that enhanced materials be submitted with that request. And then also we have another policy in this section associated with flooding that supports the flood protection plan improvements in the city of Sparks, including levees and terracing.
Please continue.
All right, on this slide, we have 3 policies that address annexation procedures. These are located all in the managing growth section of Chapter 4 of the plan. As drafted, we have policy MG7. It specifies that any regional plan amendments associated with a property for which an application for a voluntary annexation has been submitted should be processed in advance of final consideration of the annexation. Why is this needed? We have a state law that doesn't require voluntary annexations, which are contiguous to the city and requested by 100% of property owners, to go through the regional plan amendment process, say to amend the boundaries of the Truckee Meadows service area or amend the boundaries of the City of Sparks SOI, as was recently done, you'll remember, for that annexation parcel proposed to be added to the Five Ridges project site considered in July. Going through that regional process in advance of an annexation that's voluntary has been the practice of the City of Sparks. It's really something that helps us be a good neighbor to the county. And so this policy really formalizes that practice. In addition, we have policy MG8 proposed for your consideration. This policy indicates that development agreements should be required in conjunction with annexation applications for properties over 5 acres in size. For sites under that size, the policy supports consideration of a development agreement as appropriate. So a bit more flexibility for those smaller sites. And then lastly on this slide, policy MG9 specifies when an annexation application should be submitted to the city in conjunction with development intensification. Here, this policy specifies that a development intensification is an entitlement, parcel map, grading permit, or building permit that ultimately creates a new structure requiring a sewer connection. So really, if a property is going to be receiving, in essence, city services, we want it to be annexed to the city if possible. So that wraps up the annexation procedure policies.
I'm not seeing any questions, so please continue.
Okay. So in the connectivity section of Chapter 4, as you can see on this slide, there are 2 future improvement related changes. First off, Gregg Street is identified in the workshop draft as a desired location for a future RTC corridor study. Those corridor studies often look at how to best integrate facilities for multiple types of transportation users. So bicycles, pedestrians, how do we get those users into roadways that were designed primarily for the automobile? And here, Gregg Street is a great example of an auto-oriented roadway design that's lacking pedestrian and bicycle facilities. With NDOT not supportive of bike lane facilities on Glendale, further looking into multimodal improvements on Gregg Street. At this time, staff feels is an appropriate place to go to better provide east-west multimodal facilities in the industrial area south of I-80. Glendale was identified as a complete streets in our within our comprehensive plan. In addition, policy C6 is also proposed to enhance Victorian Avenue with bicycle facilities from Rock Boulevard to Pyramid Way. Basically what we have are some missing links for bike facilities over that segment. And so filling in those missing links would support, a much broader east-west connectivity from Victorian Avenue to Nichols Boulevard and Lincoln Way, basically, from the westernmost portions of the city all the way out past the marina. And then we do know that these 2 locations for either future improvements or the study thereof are limited. In working through this round of the updates to the comprehensive plan, what we've realized and just kind of wanted to give you a heads up on is that we have a bit more detailed work to do. We do want to do a few more updates to our complete street map and our trails and pathways map. But we know this work is going to take a little bit more time, but wanted you to know that we do see that as an upcoming effort so that you can be thinking about it in terms of future discussions and know that there's going to be an opportunity to consider the connectivity section of the comp plan in a little bit more detail in the future.
Commissioner Carey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Has staff looked at the Rock Boulevard for a possible corridor study? I know there's a lot of changes along that corridor.
No, we haven't, Commissioner Carey, but we can put that in for consideration.
I think Rock Boulevard, to get on the queue, I certainly agree with the Gregg Street and the Victorian Avenue bicycle studies. I think those are much needed. If you could put it in the queue, I think Rock Boulevard would be a good one to take a look at. I certainly believe in the RTC corridor study process. When I was on the Citizens Advisory Committee for the RTC, we had suggested the Sparks Boulevard corridor, and that's been leading to some really good safety improvements. And there was a public meeting last night. I think with the Rock Boulevard, with all the land use issues, the transportation issues, the traffic and safety issues, and just kind of the changes that are coming along that corridor with respect to the Spaghetti Bowl project and changing up the interchange there, I think there could be a really good opportunity with the right of way that's going to be left over to increase the safety in that corridor and help get some much needed investment to that part of the city.
Very good. Any other questions? All right, I think you're good to go.
Okay. So one last policy change related to the connectivity portion of the comprehensive plan. You can see here a summary of those changes to policy C4 regarding sidewalk facilities. It's proposed to be modified to provide a bit greater detail regarding the installation of sidewalks on the city's street networks. So as proposed, kind of that additional detail, it makes a distinction between greenfield areas and previously developed areas. So as proposed in greenfield areas, sidewalks would be required adjacent to residences on local roads. And then for arterial and collector roadways, there would be an option of either sidewalks on both sides of the street or a multi-use path on one side of the street. And you can actually see what that would look like in terms of one of our existing streets in the picture on this side. This is Los Altos Parkway, east of its intersection with Vista Boulevard. And that approach in terms of sidewalk facilities in greenfield areas is consistent with sidewalk facility locations in the city. In addition to Los Altos Parkway, another good example that you're likely familiar with is Vista Boulevard, starting at Los Altos Parkway at the south, and then kind of retaining a multi-use path on one side of the street until it turns into Campello Drive within the Foothills Plan development. In previously developed areas, the draft changes to policy C4 support pedestrian access with sidewalks on both sides of the street or a multi-use path on one side of the street. Noting, here in previously developed areas, it's often a little bit more difficult in constrained right-of-way situations to go in and get sidewalks on both sides of the street. So with that, that's kind of the changes that are drafted to policy C4 at this time.
Thank you. That was an outstanding summary. I really have to thank staff for presenting that. Are there any other further questions from the commission to staff? So go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt, Chair Reed. So there's one more slide. Sorry if
I'm sorry.
I led with wrapped up on connectivity, but there's one more proposed policy change, and then we will certainly be wrapped up with the overview of the amendments.
Go ahead.
Okay. So, whoops, sorry about that. So the very last targeted policy change, this relates to employment lands. The policy on this slide is shown as MG3. That's really just due to renumbering based on other plan changes. But it's been previously discussed by the Planning Commission as policy MG4. So you may remember it as that. In working with the policy, what the Commission has expressed is a desire for more clarity regarding how it should be applied. And during the last study session where this policy was discussed, one of the things that the Commission noted was the importance of non-residential development in supporting the stability of the city's general fund that funds city services. That was something that was also mentioned as a key issue. So based on the input that you've provided, what staff has drafted is the text shown on blue on this slide for your consideration. The additions provide clarity by indicating the supply of employment land should be evaluated at the citywide level. And that supports economic development efforts. And then it also goes on to note that the city has a responsibility in monitoring not only land supply, but also demand for employment land so that we have relatively recent information to analyze and inform comprehensive plan amendments. And while non-residential development alongside residential development is certainly important to the city's fiscal health, being able to accommodate that non-residential development really relates to market demand, and then having a land supply that allows the market to bring forward non-residential development, and specifically office and industrial that typically generate a positive impact to the city. We know currently that we have a lack of industrial land to meet demand, whereas we have an excess of retail and office land based on demand. And we have policies in our economic vitality section of the comprehensive plan that support attracting new investment and jobs to that industrial area north of the Turkey River and south of Interstate 80, and then evaluating the feasibility of expanding city limits to the east to accommodate job generating uses. So as those efforts are completed with those policies, and we engage in this ongoing monitoring in terms of what is our land supply and what do we have in terms of demand for employment land, what we could expect is further policy changes that guide land use studies and designation changes. So definitely interested in your thoughts on this policy, given we've discussed it a fair bit. But then also this is the end of the draft amendment discussion. So if there's anything that the commission would like to go back to, or other topics that need to be brought up, this would be a great time to do so. And the only other thing that I'll touch on before things wrap up is just kind of where we're headed in terms of next steps.
Okay. Sienna, thank you. Commissioner Peterson has a question.
Yeah, it's not a question, it's more of a comment. I was fortunate enough to sit on the City of Sparks Planning Commission when we did our master plan. And then I was on regional when we presented it, and we was on regional when they redid theirs and redid the mapping and everything else. And all I wanted to make one fine comment is we knew this was coming. And my hats go off to our staff, because there's one great big bunch of work that had to go into all of this to bring it into compliance with regional. And I do recognize your hard work. Thank you guys very much.
Thank you, Commissioner Peterson. Commissioner Carey, did you have a question or a comment?
I have a few more comments and maybe some ideas and things to possibly consider. I certainly concur with the proposed changes that bring it in compliance with the regional plan. I really like the mixed use core standards. And I think that will really work well with the new tiering standards of the regional plan to help hopefully control and focus growth in the region a little bit more efficiently. I like the changes that were made to policy MG3 that we have up on the screen. I think staff did a really good job of capturing what the commission was saying in the past. It's certainly a good practice to always have the 2019 long-term fiscal health analysis in the back of our minds. Just a couple suggestions. I certainly didn't mean to bash our partners at the RTC. I just have some frustrations with how the transit service has been rolled out in our city. But I think that there's with the changes that they have and the huge fiscal cuts with their limited sources of revenue, I think we should consider putting some narrative into pages 80 and 81 to discuss transit cuts that we've seen in the mixed-use corridor and possible future cuts to the area. And I think it would be good to look at a new policy or amending an existing policy within the connectivity goals and policy section to look at making sure, along with the stuff that we have in the new regional plan, to ensure consistency, but that the city and the RTC truly work together on these routes with new services and changes to make sure that it fits within our land use plan and meets those core mixed use standards. A couple other policies that I really think there's a great opportunity to beef up as part of this update, and that I think that the city should strongly consider. Policy CC3, that's evaluate a historic district. I think there's a great opportunity to take a look at, take that a step further and actually look at creating a historic district and maybe utilizing the tools within Title 20 to do that. I think given the loss of the historic resources we've seen in our historic areas, and the fact that there's only a few left, I think it would be good to maybe take a renewed effort on that. Obviously, staffing is a big consideration, but I think with the architectural surveys that the city has completed and that the State Historic Preservation Office has completed, there's enough evidence and information to move forward on creating a historic district and utilizing those tools within Title 20 in the Historic Preservation Ordinance. I'd also like to see on page 37 and 38 of the plan some narrative with respect to the cultural resources section. I think it's important that as part of our process, and it should be the policy of the city, that with cultural resources within the city, that we make sure that we're consulting with our Native American tribal governments and partners in the region. I think since the adoption of the comprehensive plan, there's been some fairly significant changes to state law with respect to management of cultural resources and the requirements that cities and private parties have to do. I think it's important that the city makes sure that we have language within the comprehensive plan. We make protocols to ensure compliance with the requirements of Senate Bill 244 from the 2017 session, and more specifically, the requirements outlined in NRS 381.207. In the interest of protecting historic resource or cultural resources within the city, I think it's important that the policy of the city should be to work with federal, tribal, state, and local and private stakeholders on the protection and management of these resources. You know, the city has been growing, and I expect it to grow outwards, and we're going to continue to come in contact with cultural resources. And I want to make sure that the policy of the city is to work with all of the stakeholders and make sure that we identify, manage, mitigate those cultural resources appropriately and in compliance with federal and state law. I would offer my assistance with staff to help develop this language. I think it's very important. And I think it'd be respectful if we were to consult with the tribal historic preservation officers of the Reno Sparks Indian Colony, the Pyramid Lake Paiute tribe, and the Washoe tribe of Nevada and California in crafting this language.
Thank you, Commissioner Carey. Any other comments or questions?
Commissioner Carey, on the comment regarding coordination with RTC, we have a handful in the connectivity section. One of them identifies the I think it's policy C3, talking about if transportation modes are removed from certain streets. Do you think that we could expand on something like that, or are you talking more of like the policy that we have with the school district that says we will coordinate with the school district? And I think that's in like the community facilities and services section. So more a coordinated effort with RTC. Just is that what you're getting at?
Yeah, I think it's more of the latter, and that we have maybe a new policy in there that, you know, we're making sure we're coordinating and working collaboratively on any service changes within the mixed use core.
Okay.
Sounds good. Anything else? All right. I think, Sienna, you can go ahead and wrap it up.
Okay. All right. So, you know, what do we have ahead of us? You know, tonight we're asking the commission to give us some direction on possible changes to the draft amendments that we've discussed tonight. And, you know, we've all been taking notes and making sure that we're, you know, understanding a bit more about where you'd like to head. So based on, you know, the direction that we receive, what we'll do is move forward with revising the amendments in the workshop draft. Sounds like there's maybe a few changes needed to what's there, a few additions that need to come into the plan. And once those are in, what we would do is produce a public hearing review draft. And that would be considered by the Planning Commission likely later this fall. It may be in November, it may be a little bit later, just depending on timing. But following the adoption of the amendments by the Planning Commission, they would, as noted by Commissioner Peterson, go forward to Regional Planning Commission for conformance review. And assuming that determination of conformance is made, they'd move forward to council for certification. So, this does take a little bit of time and process. What we're thinking is that all of these steps likely wouldn't be wrapped up until early in 2021. So just wanted to give you a sense of what's ahead there. And, from a workshop direction item tonight, if there are other items that you'd like to provide us with direction on, we'd be looking for those, or we'd be looking to just move forward with what's been provided so far.
Thank you. And again, outstanding job on presenting this. So are there any other comments or questions by any of the other commissioners before we move? Okay. So my understanding is that our motion is to either direct staff to modify as is, or identify modifications. Is that correct?
That is
correct, Chair Reed.
All right. Thank you. So, Commissioner Carey.
Madam Chair, I'll take a stab at crafting a motion to that effect. I move to direct staff to modify the draft amendments to the City of Sparks Comprehensive Plan based on the discussion of the Planning Commission meeting tonight.
Thank you.
I'll second.
So we have a motion by Commissioner Carey and a second by Commissioner Peterson. Any further discussion? Commissioner Carey.
Just a question for staff. Is that motion satisfactory, or do you need more specific direction?
Madam Chair, may I?
Yes.
Armando Ornelas, Assistant Community Services Director. Commissioner Carey, I think that's satisfactory, and I frankly appreciate that allows for some flexibility there. Hopefully, in your view as well as ours. I think I understood pretty well the suggestions that you've made. The obvious questions that come to mind with regard to policy CC3, that's obviously a resource issue. So that's something that we'll have to, look at in terms of the ability to move forward with the creation of a historic district, in any sort of foreseeable time frame. Certainly the policy can be amended, but then that leaves open when it would be actually executed. With regard to the suggestions you made regarding modification or addition of a policy regarding cultural resources, I do have a concern that per your suggestion, that in order to consult with the various parties involved in those issues, as I think you in particular can probably appreciate, even consultation on a policy for addition to the plan can be time intensive in terms of taking potentially certainly weeks, months to even have those discussions and reach some agreement on a policy. I think it's particularly challenging because it's a very politically sensitive topic. So I guess my comment on that would be we will look at that. We will consider something along those lines in terms of a policy. It may be that ultimately we conclude that it would be outside of the time frame for bringing these amendments forward, and that it rolls into that next round of amendments. But that's I wanted to get out there. I didn't want to necessarily let the planning commission or leave the planning commission thinking that all of those changes would necessarily come forward, because there is a time aspect here, and that last policy in particular may take more time than we have.
No, thank you for that explanation, Armand. I just wanted to make sure that we provided that flexibility to staff and we're not slowing things down. I know it's a pretty short timeline on these changes, and And I'm happy to assist with crafting the language and kind of, before it comes back, and assisting with whatever consultation. But I think I appreciate the opportunity tonight to have this discussion and throw out some ideas, and whether it's part of this update or next year's more comprehensive update, I appreciate this opportunity.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Carey and Armando. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Commissioner Peterson.
To clarify the motion, Mondo, maybe you can help us. This is not the final word we had on this. This is only giving you the go-ahead with what we were addressed with tonight. Is that not so?
I'll look to the maker of the motion, but that's my understanding.
Yeah, Commissioner Peterson, the motion was to move forward and provide direction on the changes. We'll get another shot at it. It's my understanding.
Exactly. This isn't our final word. That's what I want to clarify. Okay. Thank you very much.
All right. Do we need to restate the motion, or can we go ahead and call for the vote? We're good?
I'll call for the vote.
Okay, great. So, Madam Secretary, can you please do a roll call vote?
Commissioner Reed?
Aye.
Commissioner Peterson?
Aye.
Commissioner Blanco?
Aye.
Commissioner Carey?
Aye.
Commissioner Pritzos?
Aye.
Commissioner Rawson?
Aye.
Thank you. Motion passes. Again, thanks to staff for that presentation. Very comprehensive presentation. No pun intended. Next, we have election of a Sparks Planning Commission Vice Chairperson for the remainder of 2020 from the following pool of applicants. David Blanco, Scott Carey, Pritzos, Mike Ralston. I don't know. My name's on there, Shelley Reed and Diane Vanderwell, but I'm just reading it as it's stated.
So Chair Reed, at the time of, obviously your name on there is an error, but at the time of drafting and publishing this agenda, Commissioner Vanderwell was not seated for a council member yet, so that is why she is included.
Correct. Thank you. So we'll go with the following pool of applicants: David Blanco, Scott Carey, Evan Pritzos, Mike Ralston. Any discussion? Commissioner Carey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think Commissioner Pritzos would do a good job filling the role of Vice Chairman for the term that's remaining. I would make a motion to appoint Commissioner Pritzos to the position of Vice Chair for the remaining term.
Thank you. Commissioner Peterson.
I'd like to second that.
Okay, thank you. We have a motion by Commissioner Carey, a second by Commissioner Peterson. Any discussion? Commissioner Pritzos.
I just want to say I'm very honored to be nominated for this position, and if I am approved, then I hope to make you all proud.
I'm sure you will. Can we go ahead and do a roll call vote?
Commissioner Reed?
Aye.
Commissioner Peterson?
Aye.
Commissioner Blanco?
Aye.
Commissioner Carey?
Aye.
Commissioner Pritzos?
Aye.
Commissioner Ralston?
Aye.
Great. Motion carries. Congratulations, Commissioner Pritzos. Next, we have our last public comment. Do we have anybody waiting to comment?
We have no requests to speak.
Thank you. I will go ahead and close public comment and move on to announcements from staff and commissioners.
On the staff side, Madam Chair, if I may.
Yes, go ahead.
Armando Ornelas, Assistant Community Services Director. The next meeting of the Planning Commission will be held on October 15th. There will be no meeting on October 1st.
Right, thank you. Anything?
That's it.
All right. Any other announcements or anything else? Commissioner Carey.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I really appreciated the moment of silence in honor of Mayor Smith at the beginning of the meeting, and I'd be remiss if I didn't provide a couple comments at our meeting here. I wanted to express my sincere condolences to the family of our late Mayor Ron Smith, who passed away last month. You know, it was a great honor to have been reappointed to him to this body, and I'm really going to miss his leadership and great personality. Ron was a tremendous leader and a dedicated servant, and made a tremendous mark on our city. And it's just a great loss to the entire Sparks family. I would encourage everyone, if they would like to make a donation to the Nevada Veterans Memorial Project. I know that was a big project of Ron, and I would love to see that completed. And I also just wanted to express my congratulations to Mayor Ed Lawson and new Councilwoman Diane Vanderwell. We're certainly going to miss her on the Planning Commission, but just wanted to congratulate those two on their new roles in the City Council, and I look forward to working with them.
Thank you, Commissioner Carey. I also want to congratulate Diane Vanderwell on her appointment to the City Council representing Ward 2. I mean, I will greatly miss her on this commission, but I know she's going to do a great job representing her ward. And again, also to our new Mayor, Ed Lawson. Are there any other comments or announcements? Okay, with that, I am ready to adjourn. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Good evening.
All right.